Hey everyone, my name is Costas and welcome back to Legal Talk, where we provide general legal information for the everyday landlord. Today, we'll be talking about a common form used and filed with the LTB. If you are a landlord who hasn't received rent payments from your tenant, the L9 may be the form you need to help recover those funds. In this video, we're going to cover the L9 form, when to use it, how to fill out the form, the expectations when using the L9, the difference between an L9 and N4, and finally, some concluding thoughts. As always, if you're new to the channel, please make sure to like our video if you enjoy the content. We are now offering coaching and consultation services, so if you need help as a landlord, visit our website and contact us for a free 15-minute session. So what is an L9? An L9 is an application to collect rent the tenant owes. This form is used when a landlord only intends to collect on past due rent and does not want to evict the tenant, unlike the N4 to L1 application where you apply for arrears and eviction. Some of you might be thinking, why would you want to apply for collection of arrears and not eviction? Wouldn't you want to evict the tenant that isn't paying the rent? Well, there are a few different circumstances that call for something less aggressive than eviction. For example, if your tenant is falling behind by only $100 over the course of 2 to 3 months, you can use an L9. Or if you have a student rental and are renting to a group of students, sign on to a group lease. You don't want to evict the whole household, just one student is falling behind. So in that case, you would serve an L9. Let's talk about how to use the form. There are 7 parts to an L9 that must be completed before filing the form. As with all legal forms and documents, you must ensure that all information is inputted correctly. Be meticulous and avoid spelling mistakes or mathematical errors, as these mistakes could hinder your ability to collect the rent due as a result of poor filing. Part 1. Ensure that you have the proper address of the rental property filled out. This would include the address, unit number, and postal code. Part 2. Noting the amount owed. You are required to enter the total amount owed to you by the tenant, but before entering this amount, I would highly recommend checking out parts 5 and 6 because the form will ask for the final calculations in that section. Part 3. This is the general information section and is pretty straightforward. In the allotted space, list your name and address and the tenant's name and address and the tenant's mailing address if it is different than their regular address, and the file number of any other files you have issued against the tenant. Now, if you require space for more than one tenant, you must go to the LTB's website and fill out a schedule of parties form to ensure every person is on the form. This is particularly important for group leases. Part 4. Next, we must establish the reasons why you are filing the L9. To do this, simply check the boxes that apply to the application you are filing. These include whether or not the tenant is still living in the rental unit and how you receive rent, be it daily, weekly, monthly, etc. Part 5. As mentioned previously, Part 5 and 6 is where we will begin with the actual calculations regarding the money you are owed and ideally should be completed prior to Part 2 to ensure consistency. This first section is for rent owing and the second is for NSF check charges. If you are filling out the form by hand, a calculator would be recommended as you will be responsible for the calculations yourself. But if you are filling out the form in a PDF reader such as Adobe Acrobat, the form will actually do the math for you. Your only responsibility in this section is to ensure that the actual monetary values are correct and in the proper areas. The form will do the rest for you. Part 6. Once you have calculated the values from the previous section, you must transfer the values to the appropriate boxes in this section. The key difference between Part 5 and 6 is that Part 6 now includes the filing fee associated with filing the L9. For the purposes of filing an L9, this cost will always be $190. Thus, you will now have the amount of rent owed, the amount of NSF charges, and the application fee. Add these 3 values and you have your total amount owing. This is where you will take the newly calculated total amount owing and insert or cross-check that number back in Part 2 of the form. Part 7. This is probably the easiest part of the entire process. Since you are the landlord, simply sign on the line labeled Landlord. In the event that you have a legal representative, leave this section blank and your representative will fill in the information and sign it for you. With the signatures in place, you are ready to file the application. Just be sure to proofread the document before submitting it, as you do not want to file a document with an error, as I mentioned earlier. Some things to note is that after you file your form with the board, you will receive a notice of hearing. If there is any information that needs updating, you bring an information update form to the hearing for submission. Now, in setting your expectations, one of the greatest things about the Landlord and Tenant Board is that, provided you follow all the required procedures, file the proper forms correctly, and act reasonably towards the tenant at all times, you should be quite successful in bringing issues before the board. It is vital that you maintain your records of payment and finances in order so the process of seeking rent, or if you eventually need to evict the tenant, goes smoothly. Ultimately, you have entered into a contract with the tenant, and if they are not paying you what you are owed, then they're in direct violation of the agreement. By maintaining a cool composure, staying on top of documentation and notices, and doing everything to attempt to rectify the situation without getting hostile, the adjudicator should see that you are acting in good faith. There is never a guarantee that the outcome will be in your favor, but by following these steps, you can ensure that you put yourself in the best possible position to be successful. L9 versus N4. It's easy to confuse the L9 with the N4 form, but on closer inspection, the difference is actually quite simple. While both forms would be filed following a period of the tenant not paying the rent, the key difference is the end goal that you as the landlord are looking to achieve. If you have no intention of ending the tenancy due to this non-payment of rent, then you would file an L9 to obtain the rent and NSF charges after the check bounced. When your goal is to terminate the tenancy, do not use the L9. You instead must file an N4, known as the notice to end your tenancy early for non-payment of rent. Following the filing of the N4 to give the appropriate notice to the tenant, you would be able to proceed to the next step of filing an L1 and formally evict the tenant from the property. It is important to note that you cannot file the L9 if the tenant has already moved out of the property. In the event that the tenant has moved out already, you can file with the court and go after the money you are owed. It certainly can be stressful when you realize that you may be required to take legal action against one of your tenants. However, getting prepared to do so has been made relatively easy through the Landlord and Tenant Board. Every form on the website has comprehensive instructions on how to file and which form you intend to use for your particular situation. The main takeaway from this guide should be the importance of thoroughness and preparation. Simple mistakes can cause significant delay or even potential prejudice against yourself from the adjudicator if you're not careful. A good legal professional on the opposing side can capitalize on these simple mistakes. The worst thing you can do is waste the adjudicator and the tribunal's time. These issues should be easily avoidable as long as you're properly preparing your documents. All right, everyone, I hope this was helpful and informative. We are now offering coaching and consultation to the professional landlord. So do reach out to us by visiting our website, like our video, and subscribe to our channel for more information about how you can become a professional landlord.